Hello friends and welcome back to Girl Plus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Jordan and today I am bringing to you episode 4 of my Indoor Seed Starting 101 series. The information that I'll be sharing with you today will help you to know what to do to care for your seedlings so that they have the opportunity to grow into strong and healthy plants. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to keep up with the rest of the series. And now we will get into episode 4. So I have here with me my seed tray of seedlings that I've started recently, plus also some cells that I have just sown a couple of days ago with seeds that have yet to germinate. And I'll be using these as kind of my demonstration tools to show you guys what you should be looking for and what you should be doing to give your seedlings the best care possible. I want to start by saying that the foundation for both your seeds that have yet to germinate as well as your seedlings once they have germinated are going to be light and water. Those are going to be the two most important things throughout your plant's life cycle. These are always going to be the first resources that they'll need to be able to even exist or continue to grow. For both before your seeds have germinated and once they've become seedlings, there are two ways to check to see if your cells need watering, and that is going to be by sight. So looking at your cells and checking essentially the color of your growing medium, and then also by weight, picking them up or even picking up your entire tray to see how light or how heavy it feels to note whether or not you need to add some water to the tray. Hopefully what I'm about to show you will pick up on camera, but I have a cell here of some tomato seeds. Now, these are two different varieties. So there's one variety here on this side and then a different variety here on this side. But between the two, even though I started these seeds at the same time, they are at different stages of their life cycle or even just their seedling cycle. And this side over here is clearly not really in need of water, whereas this one is visibly getting ready to pretty much be dried out. So I'm gonna put it up to the camera and hopefully you can see the difference on camera. The growing medium over here on this side is a little bit of a lighter brown, whereas on this side, it is a dark brown. The light brown color is going to be an indicator that my cells are in need of water or about to be in need of water, whereas the dark brown color means that they're pretty good. They have enough water, at least for now, to hold them until they begin to dry out. Now with this cell here and just holding it, and hopefully you can see that the soil on both sides are a pretty nice dark brown color, but just by the weight of this cell, I can tell that it's not really in need of water. It may be in the coming days, but right now it has enough water to sustain the plants that are in here for at least a few more days. Bottom watering is always going to be your best bet when it comes to watering your seedlings or your cells. And that's because watering on top or pouring water on top of your plants or your cells can do things like spread disease. They can facilitate fungus and mold growth and also attract pests. And that's what we don't want. And bottom watering is also going to allow your cells to absorb the water more optimally. Now, when it comes to light, what you'll want to do before your seeds germinate is keep your cells as close to the light as possible. A way that you can do this is a couple different things. You can take an empty tray that you might have, like a 10-20 tray or whatever other type of tray you may be using, flip it upside down and place the tray that has your seeds in it on top to get it closer to the light. You can also use a box, but you want to make sure that you're using something that's sturdy, that can hold your tray with stability and get it as close to the light as you possibly can. And the reason for doing this is to prevent your seedlings from essentially growing too tall. We really want the stems of our plants to be as short and as stout and thick as possible. And getting them as close to the light as possible before they germinate will give them the best opportunity to do just that. Now, once your seeds begin to germinate, I say that you leave them as close to the light as you can for the first 2 to 3 days, maybe 4 days. But once you get to that point, you can remove, if you put them on any platform, any sort of platform or thing to heighten up the tray to get it closer to the light, you can remove that. Or if you've done kind of the opposite and you've lowered your lights to be closer to the plants, you can start to raise those lights a little bit higher. Generally, you want to keep your lights about 3 to 4 inches, I would say no more than 6 inches away from the top of your plants. So like I stated before, water and light are going to be the base. That's your foundation of your seedling care overall. And those are really the only 2 things that your cells will need prior to your seeds germinating. Once your seeds have germinated and they begin to grow and reach higher levels of maturity through their life cycle, you'll want to monitor them for a few different things. Obviously, you still want to monitor them for signs of watering or needing water, but you'll also want to begin to implement some sort of fertilizing schedule, especially if you're using a sterile seed starting mix or growing medium. Sterile in this instance really just means that there's no nutrient source or food source for your plants or your seeds within the growing medium that you're using. I personally prefer to use a sterile seed mix, as those tend to have less pests and also a less likeliness of attraction of pests, especially when your seedlings are so young. Liquid fertilizer is going to be the best and the easiest / most practical option when it comes to fertilizing your seedlings specifically. And the reason for that is because you can simply add it into your watering method. What I like to do is pour my liquid fertilizer into whatever I'm using to water my plants, which is usually like an empty milk jug or a juice jug that's been washed and cleaned and dried. But the key here is to use, I would say, to start with a quarter strength of your fertilizer and build up to a half strength of whatever fertilizer you're using as your seedlings continue to mature. And you can simply do this or calculate this by using the directions on your fertilizer bottle. This is the fertilizer I have been using for this year. This one is a little bit newer to me. Generally, or what I've used in the past is fish fertilizer, and that's probably the one that I see most gardeners using. But I have this one this year, and on the back of my fertilizer bottle, I am going based off of what it says for the indoor plants. So this is a fertilizer that can be used for your outdoor garden as well as your indoor plants. I am going to base my calculation of how much fertilizer I want to use for my seedlings off of the indoor directions. And that's really just because logically in my head, these are technically indoor plants. Even though they'll be going outside eventually, I am growing them indoors. So that's just the way it makes sense in my head. So for my indoor plant directions, it tells me to use 1 cap full into 1 gallon of water. So if I want to break the strength of this fertilizer into a quarter of what it recommends on the bottle, then I'm going to basically divide by 4. So it simply says to use 1 cap full per gallon, and to make it quarter strength, I'll just use a quarter of the cap into 1 gallon of water. If I wanted to make it half strength, I would divide that by 2. Instead of using a full cap, I would put a half a cap into 1 gallon of water to make it half of the strength of what is recommended on the back of the bottle. The reason you don't want to use full strength fertilizer on your seedlings is because it can burn them. Because they are so young and immature, they can't really handle large loads of nutrients. And if you give them too much, they can burn and sometimes even die. And that's what we don't want. So again, my recommendation is to start off with the quarter strength. And then as they continue to grow and mature, you can build that up to half strength. Now you might be wondering, well, Jordan, how do we know when our plants need fertilizer? And that's a great question. So here I have some pepper plants that recently germinated, and the first leaves that always come out when your seedlings first germinated are not their true leaves, but they're what are called cotyledons. Cotyledons, as I said prior, are just the first leaves of any plant to germinate. They are never the true leaves of the plant, and usually these leaves, as the plant continues to mature and grow, will die off of the plant eventually. So as you can see, all of these pepper seedlings here pretty much only have their cotyledons. They are beginning to cleave some true leaves in the middle, but for the most part, they just have their cotyledons. When they're at this stage, they do not need any fertilizer yet. They are still pretty much running off some of the nutrients that are contained in the actual seed itself. So they still have a little bit of that remaining. And what you'll want to do is watch for once they begin to form their true leaves. Now these pepper plants here I have had for a while. They germinated a while ago and they're at a pretty sizable maturity at this point in their life cycle. So these actually have a couple of sets of true leaves, and prior to this would be a good time to fertilizer, but at this point especially is a good time to fertilize. I would say once your first set of true leaves begin to pretty much reach close to their full maturity, or once you start to see the second set of true leaves cleaving through the middle of your plant, which would be for pepper plants like right here. Once you start to see that second set of leaves trying to come through, that is probably the most optimal time to begin your fertilizing schedule. For me personally, I start out with fertilizing my seedlings probably at every other watering. And then once they reach the point where they have at least 6 true leaves, I will begin to fertilize them at every watering schedule. And I will also start to increase the amount of fertilizer that I'm using as well. Once your seeds have germinated, you really want to add fertilizing to the base of your foundation of light and water to make sure that you're growing, again, strong and healthy plants. Anything outside of those 3 things are helpful, but not absolutely necessary. But I will, of course, provide you with some pro tips to, again, just give your seedlings the best opportunity to be as strong and as healthy as possible, which is pretty much the main thing that we really want. And the first tip would be to have some sort of airflow or air circulation in your germination station or your growing station. This is going to help with a couple of things. One, it's going to give that constant airflow to kind of help keep the top portion of the soil on your trays a little bit more dry than the bottom area. And what that is going to do is inhibit mold and fungus growth so that it kind of prevents that from building up or from getting too outrageous at least. And then it will also help your plants to grow nice and thick stems. One thing you can do to supplement that, maybe if you don't have any air circulation, is to every day, one thing I like to do is to just brush my hand across the top of my plants. And that kind of acts as my wind that they would get if they were outside. That will help them to know to grow their stems thicker and stronger so that they can withstand the wind once they are actually outside. And so they won't break or fall over or bend or things like that, which could harm the plant. You could add airflow a couple of different ways. I have seen people add fans onto their actual grow station setup. So if they have a shelving system, they'll have fans hooked up to their shelves that are blowing onto the plants. You could have one large fan in the room or the area where your growing station is set up as well. If your growing station is in an area where you have a door that you can open to allow some breeze or airflow into that area, that's another option. So there are a few different things that you can do to kind of help bring in or build the air circulation and airflow for your seedlings as they are germinating and growing. The second pro tip I could give is to use a heating mat. Now this is more specifically for the germination phase, but can also be used for the overall seedling care of hotter weather plants for something like pepper plants. Pepper plants specifically tend to like it to be more warm than other seedlings do. So even after germination, if you have a tray or an area where you have your pepper plants sitting, a heating mat could be helpful to continuing to ensure those plants can thrive, especially if you are germinating and growing your seedlings in an area or a space like a garage or somewhere else where it might be a little more drafty or maybe isn't as climate controlled as the actual interior of a home. And that last tip will pretty much wrap up this episode. I hope you guys were able to get some useful information in regards to making sure that you can take proper care of your seedlings. The next episode is going to be focused on thinning our seedlings if necessary once they've actually germinated, and also uppotting our plants when they reach that point as well. So don't forget to subscribe to make sure you can catch that once it drops. Thank you so much as always for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.